There is a rhythm to life, an unseen current that carries you forward even when you think you are standing still. You may not notice it in the chaos of survival, when every moment feels like a fight, when every day is spent chasing the next breath, the next meal, the next small piece of safety. In that place, life is not lived, it is endured. The horizon seems so far away that you forget it even exists. But what you do not see is that even in those moments of struggle, something deeper is at work. Beneath the noise of your worries, the ground is shifting. The tide is turning. And you are already moving, not into more struggle, but into abundance. You have been taught to think that abundance is something you must chase, something distant that requires endless effort. But abundance is not a finish line. It is a state of being. It begins when the mind unclenches from fear, when the body no longer trembles from scarcity. The seed of it is planted in you now, in this very moment, and it grows not from force, but from trust. The same way winter slowly becomes spring without your intervention, so too will your survival quietly transform into something far greater. It's a matter of survival sharpens you. It makes you resourceful, it teaches you resilience, and it reveals to you what truly matters. Without those years of clawing your way forward, you would not recognize abundance when it comes. In the quiet moments between your fears, you can feel it approaching. A lightness in your chest. A small but undeniable sense that the heaviness is not permanent. The bills may still be due, the obstacles may still appear, but the energy is shifting. The air feels different. You begin to notice opportunities instead of threats, open doors instead of walls. This transition is not something you can force. The more you push, the more it slips away, because abundance flows best to the relaxed heart. When you are clenched in desperation, you close yourself off from the very currents that would carry you forward. But when you release your grip, when you let the river move you, you find yourself arriving in places you could never have reached by sheer effort alone. Survival taught you to hold on for dear life. Abundance will teach you to let go. You might think you have to earn your right to abundance, but the truth is you are already worthy of it simply because you exist. The world has been preparing this shift for you long before you could see it. The path is already paved. All that's left is for you to walk it. And as you walk, you will notice that your choices begin to change. You are no longer making decisions from fear, but from possibility. You are no longer trying to escape danger, but to create beauty. This is how you know you are moving into abundance. Not because you suddenly have everything, but because you no longer feel like you are losing everything. And so, take a deep breath. The days of scraping by are giving way to days of overflowing. The energy that once went into survival will now pour into creation, into joy, into the building of a life that feels expansive instead of confined. You will look back on the years of struggle not with bitterness, but with gratitude, for they have carved the space that abundance now rushes to fill. You are crossing that invisible line, and you do not need to run. The current is already carrying you there. Even when you are caught in the grind of survival, when every day feels like a repeat of the same exhausting struggle, there are forces moving in ways you cannot yet see. Life does not transform in the way a door swings open. It is more like the slow turning of the seasons. You don't notice the first warm breeze after winter, nor do you hear the first leaf falling when summer fades. Yet the shift is happening all the same. In the depths of hardship, you might believe that abundance is somewhere far away, locked behind walls of effort, time, and luck. But the truth is, even in your darkest nights, the soil is preparing for the bloom. Things are aligning for you, quietly, invisibly, beneath the surface of your awareness. Just because you cannot see it does not mean it isn't real. The roots of change are often hidden, and the most important transformations take place in silence. When you are living in survival mode, your attention narrows to the most immediate concerns, the next bill, the next problem, the next potential threat. Your mind becomes a scanner for danger, constantly seeking what could go wrong. And in that constant vigilance, you miss what is beginning to go right. It is easy to overlook the subtle shifts. A small opportunity here, a kind word there, an unexpected moment of relief. These moments may seem insignificant, but they are the early threads of abundance, weaving their way into your life. The shift from survival to abundance does not always announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes it tiptoes in softly, so softly you could mistake it for nothing at all. Think of the way seeds work. You can plant them in the ground and stare at the soil for days, seeing nothing. If you didn't know better, you might think nothing is happening. But beneath that surface, a transformation is underway. The seed is cracking open, the roots are stretching downward, the stem is pushing upward, and life is quietly building the foundation for something beautiful to break through. This is the way abundance begins to enter your life. Just because you can't see the green sprout yet doesn't mean the growth isn't happening. In fact, those unseen moments are some of the most critical, for they prepare the strength and stability that abundance needs to flourish. There are people and circumstances already moving in your favor that you have no knowledge of yet. Perhaps someone is speaking your name in a room you've never stepped into. Perhaps a decision is being made in a place you've never been that will eventually open a door for you. Perhaps the struggle you're enduring right now is shaping you into someone who can handle the very blessings you've been asking for. These unseen shifts are as much a part of abundance as the money, relationships, or opportunities you can touch. The universe does not deliver all at once. It delivers in steps, aligning pieces quietly until the moment is right for you to see the full picture. It's important to understand that abundance is not just about more money, more possessions, or more opportunities. It's about moving from a place where you feel trapped and powerless to a place where you feel free and capable. Even if your circumstances have not yet changed in the ways you wish, you may already feel small pockets of that freedom emerging. Maybe you find yourself worrying less about something that used to consume you. Maybe you have more moments of peace than you did before. Maybe you've started to dream again, even if only for a few minutes a day. These are not coincidences. They are the earliest signs of abundance making its way into your life. In survival mode, your energy is consumed by the basics, keeping the roof over your head, keeping the lights on, keeping food on the table. In abundance, there is space to breathe, to think beyond the next day, to imagine a life that is more than just getting by. The transition between these two states is rarely abrupt. It is a gradual expansion, like light creeping into a dark room. One day you realize you can see more than you could before. You start to notice beauty in small things. You feel gratitude for what you have, even if it's not yet everything you want. Gratitude is the language of abundance, and the more you speak it, the more fluent you become in receiving. You might think that your current struggles prove that abundance is not here yet, but that's only because you're measuring it by the wrong signs. If you look only for big dramatic changes, you might miss the gentle, consistent flow that is already carrying you toward a new reality. Abundance often begins in the unseen places, in your thoughts, in your emotions, in the way you speak to yourself. The moment you shift from thinking, "I will never have enough," to "something better is on the way," you have already stepped into the current that leads to more. The outer world always lags behind the inner world. So if you've begun to feel even a flicker of hope, you are already further along than you think. This is why patience is so important. The same patience that allows a gardener to trust the seed is the patience you must give to your own transformation. You cannot dig up the soil every day to check if the plant is growing. Doing so would only harm it. In the same way, you cannot constantly question whether abundance is coming, whether you are moving forward, whether life is changing for the better. That constant questioning pulls you back into survival mode, into the doubt and fear that choke the flow of what's already arriving. Trust that the shift is happening, even when you can't see it, because it is. In the quiet spaces between your worries, you may have already felt it, that strange, unexplainable sense that things might actually work out, that you are not doomed to live in struggle forever, that the weight you've been carrying will not always feel so heavy. You might not be able to explain why you feel this, but you don't need to. This is the whisper of abundance, telling you that the ground beneath your feet is moving, that the currents are changing, that what you've been surviving is slowly giving way to something greater. And while it might still feel distant, the truth is it is already here, unfolding silently, preparing to reveal itself when you are ready to step into it fully. The years you have spent in survival mode were not wasted time, even though they may have felt like endless struggle. Those days, months, or even years when you were scraping by, doing whatever it took to make it through, were shaping you in ways you couldn't recognize while you were in them. They were carving out strength in you, teaching you to adapt, showing you the depths of your resilience. They were stripping away illusions and distractions, forcing you to focus on what truly mattered. Every sleepless night, every moment you thought you couldn't keep going but did anyway, was forging a version of you that could stand in abundance without being swallowed by it. Survival is not a punishment. It is the training ground for abundance. If abundance had arrived in your life too early, before you had learned the lessons of scarcity, it would have slipped through your fingers. Without the wisdom that comes from enduring hard times, you would not have known how to appreciate it, nurture it, and sustain it. Survival has a way of sharpening your vision. It makes you notice the value of things that others overlook. The simple meal, the quiet evening, the kind gesture, these small recognitions are the seeds of gratitude. And gratitude is the soil in which abundance thrives. Without the contrast of struggle, abundance would simply feel ordinary. But because you have known what it is to have less, you will see more clearly when you have more. Think about how a tree grows. In the harsh seasons, when the weather is unforgiving and the conditions are poor, the tree focuses on strengthening its roots. Those roots dig deeper into the earth, anchoring the tree against the storms. You are no different. Your survival years were your root years. They forced you to dig deep, to find inner reserves of courage and patience you didn't know you had. You learned how to stand firm when the winds of life tried to break you. And now, as abundance begins to flow toward you, those strong roots will keep you grounded so that you can enjoy your blessings without being blown away by them. The mind. Survival teaches you to recognize real value. When you have been without, you understand that money is not just paper, that opportunities are not just random chances, that relationships are not just convenient connections. You see them as gifts to be respected and cared for. People who have never struggled sometimes take abundance for granted, wasting it without thought. But you will treat it differently. You will know what it means to stretch what you have, to make something out of nothing, to turn the smallest resources into something meaningful. That resourcefulness will not disappear when abundance arrives. It will multiply your blessings. You will know how to make them last. The challenges of survival have also refined your sense of discernment. You have learned to read people, to sense intentions, to spot danger before it reaches your doorstep. These skills will protect your abundance. When opportunities begin to come your way, you will be able to distinguish between those that build you up and those that lead you astray. You will recognize when someone is genuine and when they are only there for what they can take. This is a wisdom born out of necessity, and it is priceless in the world of abundance, where not every open door leads somewhere good. Perhaps most importantly, survival has taught you patience. You have endured long stretches of waiting for the situation to change, waiting for help to arrive, waiting for the storm to pass. And though it may have been frustrating, that waiting has built endurance in you. In abundance, patience allows you to grow your blessings rather than consume them all at once. It teaches you that not every reward has to be immediate, and that sometimes the best things come slowly, over time. It's not even useless. Rating isn't useless, just love. It teaches you that not every reward has to be immediate, and that sometimes the best things come slowly, over time. Without patience, abundance can lead to impulsiveness and loss. With patience, abundance becomes a steady river instead of a sudden flood. There is also a humility that comes from survival. When you have been at the bottom, you know how quickly life can change. That humility will keep you connected to the very source of your blessings. It will keep you generous, willing to help others, because you remember what it felt like to need help yourself. Abundance without humility can turn into arrogance. But when you carry the memory of your struggles, abundance becomes a tool to uplift, not just to indulge. You will want to share it, to spread it, to use it in ways that make a difference. It means the less we love, the less will leave us apart and alone. Some of the people you will meet in your abundant years will not understand the depth of your gratitude or the way you handle your blessings. They may think you are overly careful or that you treasure small things too much, but they will not have lived through what you have. They will not have sat in the quiet panic of wondering how you would make it through another week. They will not have felt the sting of turning down something you wanted because you simply could not afford it. This is why survival changes you, because it etches the memory of struggle into your soul, and that memory becomes a compass that guides you when abundance arrives. It is easy to look back at your years of survival with bitterness, to feel like they stole time from you. But if you look closely, you will see that they also gave you something irreplaceable, the tools to build a life that lasts. They have trained you to be a good steward of what you receive, to protect it, to nurture it, and to grow it. Without those years, abundance might have been nothing more than a passing moment. With them, abundance can become a lasting way of life. So when you feel frustrated that you are not yet where you want to be, remember that survival is not separate from abundance. It is the path to it. Every challenge, every obstacle, every hard choice has been part of your preparation. You are not just stumbling into abundance by chance. You are arriving with the strength, clarity, and wisdom to hold it, because survival has shaped you into the kind of person who can. Fear has a way of gripping the mind so tightly that it blocks the very things you are longing for. When you are in survival mode, your thoughts are often drenched in worry about what might go wrong, about whether you have enough, about how to keep yourself from losing the little that you do have. That fear feels justified because for so long it has been your shield. It has kept you alert, ready to defend yourself against loss, but the same fear that protected you in scarcity will keep you trapped there if you never learn to release it. Abundance does not flourish in the soil of desperation. It needs the openness of trust. Letting go is not giving up. It is creating space for something greater to flow in. When you cling to survival with white-knuckled tension, every decision is shaped by the need to protect yourself. You spend your days calculating risks, holding on to whatever you can, afraid to make a move that could lead to loss. That mindset makes sense when you have little to work with. But when you are stepping into abundance, it becomes a cage. The opportunities you've been praying for require a different posture, one of openness, receptivity, and willingness to allow life to unfold without controlling every detail. This is why letting go is so essential. The energy of abundance moves like water, and water cannot fill a clenched fist. Letting go means releasing the belief that you must micromanage your way to safety. It means allowing the current to carry you instead of exhausting yourself by swimming against it. It is trusting that life has the capacity to bring you more than you could force into being through sheer effort. The irony is that most people believe they must fight harder to create abundance, but the truth is that the fight itself often blocks it. After all, you create your own agenda. Without creating abundance, you create your own agenda. Fear-based action tends to create more fear. Trust-based action creates room for growth. Think of the difference between a person who plants a garden and then tries to pull the plants up to make them grow faster, versus the person who plants and then waters them patiently, knowing the process will take time. The first person's impatience destroys the very thing they wanted. The second person's trust in the process allows the garden to flourish. Abundance responds to trust in the same way. When you let go, you stop smothering it with your need to control, and you allow it to breathe, to grow, and to expand naturally. Letting go does not mean becoming careless. It is not about ignoring responsibilities or abandoning all effort. It is about shifting the energy behind your actions. In survival, effort is driven by fear. I must do this or I will lose everything. In abundance, effort is driven by possibility. I am building something because I trust it will grow. When you are no longer acting out of desperation, You begin to see choices differently. You take opportunities that once felt too risky because you trust that even if they do not work out, you will still be okay. You should first ensure that whatever you have, you should focus it all upon yourself. You should be the practical help and courage and support of others. Fear and desperation narrow your vision. They make you focus only on avoiding loss, which causes you to miss the doors that are opening around you. When you let go, your perspective shifts. You start to notice opportunities that were invisible before. You feel more creative, more resourceful, more willing to explore new possibilities. And as you say yes to these opportunities, they expand into more. This is how letting go becomes a bridge between survival and abundance. It turns your energy from one of holding back to one of moving forward. One of the hardest parts about letting go is the feeling that you might lose control. You've trained yourself to hold everything together, to anticipate every potential disaster, because that was how you stayed afloat during hard times. The idea of loosening your grip feels dangerous. But control is often an illusion. The things you have been clinging to may not be what is keeping you safe. They might be what is keeping you small. In truth, safety often comes from allowing life to work with you instead of trying to force it to work for you. Letting go also creates emotional space. In survival mode, your mind is crowded with constant calculations, how to stretch money, how to juggle responsibilities, how to solve every problem before it arrives. This constant mental tension leaves no room for inspiration or joy. When you release some of that control, you create openings in your life where unexpected blessings can enter. A conversation you didn't plan might lead to an opportunity. A moment of rest might spark an idea that changes your direction entirely. These moments do not happen when your entire focus is on guarding what you already have. You may not even realize how much of your energy is tied up in fear until you start letting it go. Fear is heavy, and carrying it every day becomes so normal that you forget what lightness feels like. But once you begin to loosen your grip, you notice that your body feels less tense, your thoughts less clouded. You start to trust that if one door closes, another will open. You begin to understand that abundance is not a single chance you must cling to, but an endless flow of possibilities that you can tap into again and again. When you stop holding on so tightly, you give yourself permission to dream beyond survival. You allow yourself to imagine a life that is not about avoiding loss, but about creating joy. This shift in vision changes everything. You no longer ask, how can I keep what I have? Instead, you ask, how can I grow into more? That question alone aligns you with the energy of abundance, because it assumes that more is possible, that life will continue to expand for you, and it will, but only if you create the space for it. Letting go is not something that happens all at once. It is a gradual process, a daily choice to release a little more fear, a little more control, and a little more doubt. Each time you choose trust over anxiety, you make room for abundance to move in. Each time you allow yourself to rest instead of forcing another hour of struggle, you strengthen your faith in the process. And each time you stop clinging to what is, you open yourself to what could be. Eventually you realize that letting go is not about losing, it is about gaining. It is about clearing the clutter of fear so that the richness of life has room to take root. And once you understand that, you will see why abundance and relaxation are inseparable. Because only when you loosen your grip can your hands, your heart, and your life be open enough to receive. The idea that you must prove yourself worthy of abundance is one of the most persistent illusions people carry. Many have been taught, either by upbringing or experience, that they must suffer enough, work endlessly, or achieve some imagined level of perfection before they can have the life they desire. This belief runs deep, and it keeps people chasing and striving, always postponing their sense of arrival. But abundance is not a prize given to the most deserving after years of struggle. It is not a reward handed out after you've ticked off enough boxes. It is the natural state of life, and you are already worthy of it simply because you exist. Your value is not tied to how hard you've worked or how much you've endured. It is woven into your very being. The world often tells you that worth is conditional, that you must meet certain standards, look a certain way, have certain qualifications, or achieve certain milestones before you can enjoy the fullness of life. And yet, nature tells a different story. The sun rises each morning without asking whether you've earned its light. The rain falls without checking if you've been good enough to deserve it. Trees bear fruit not because they've proven themselves to anyone, but because that is what they are meant to do. Abundance is not something you have to earn. It is something you align yourself with by recognizing that you are already enough. When you believe you are unworthy, even if abundance is within reach, you will push it away. You will self-sabotage without even realizing it. You will question every opportunity, doubt every blessing, and look for reasons why it can't last. This is why recognizing your inherent worth is essential. When you accept that you are worthy now without needing to change into someone else, you stop resisting the good that wants to enter your life. You become a willing receiver instead of someone who is always apologizing for taking up space. The belief in your worthiness changes the way you see yourself and the way you move in the world. In survival mode, you often feel as though you must justify every step you take, every resource you use, every bit of joy you allow yourself. There is guilt attached to wanting more, as if your desires are unreasonable or selfish. But when you truly understand that abundance is part of your birthright, that guilt begins to dissolve. You start to allow yourself to want without shame. You stop seeing your desires as a burden and start seeing them as a compass, pointing you toward the life you are meant to live. Abundance flows most easily to those who believe they belong in it. This is not arrogance, it is alignment. It is standing in the truth that you are not separate from the source of life that creates beauty, opportunity, and prosperity. You are a part of it. You are an expression of it. When you understand this, you no longer see abundance as something outside of you that you must run after. You see it as something that is drawn to you because you are a natural match for it. Just as flowers open to the sun without hesitation, you can open to abundance without feeling you have to earn it first. The world is full of examples of people who have wealth, love, or success without having done enough to deserve it in the eyes of others. And there are just as many people who have worked endlessly without ever experiencing true abundance. This alone should tell you that worthiness and abundance are not directly tied to effort. Effort matters, yes, but it is not the foundation. The foundation is your acceptance of yourself as already worthy. From that acceptance, your actions naturally align with creating and receiving more. No way or in any way kidnapped from that basis. You're that incredible, world-class individual who succeeded in anything. Build it. The fear of not being worthy often comes from comparison. You see someone else's life and measure yourself against it, deciding that you fall short. But abundance is not a competition. It is not limited to a fixed amount that must be divided. The fact that someone else is living fully does not diminish your ability to do the same. The ocean does not run out of water when one wave rises higher than another. In the same way, life does not run out of abundance when someone else experiences it. There is enough for you too, and you do not need to prove why you should have your share. Believing in your inherent worth also changes how you handle the abundance that arrives. When you see yourself as unworthy, you may cling to it out of fear, or squander it because deep down you expect it to disappear. But when you know you deserve to have it, you treat it with respect and care, not desperation. You see it as something that belongs in your life, and because you believe it belongs, it tends to stay. You attract more of it because you are no longer pushing it away with doubt and fear. There is also a peace that comes with accepting your worth. The endless striving, the constant hustle to prove yourself begins to fade. You still work, you still grow, but the energy is different. It is no longer about earning your place. It is about expressing who you already are. You create because it brings you joy, not because you are afraid you won't be enough if you don't. That shift in energy is magnetic to abundance. It draws opportunities, relationships, and resources to you because they match the frequency of ease and confidence you are now living in. You might still have moments when old beliefs try to pull you back into doubt, when you question whether you are really deserving of what's coming your way. That is natural because survival mode leaves deep patterns. But in those moments, remind yourself that your worth is not up for debate. You were born worthy, you will die worthy. Nothing you gain or lose in between can alter that truth. Abundance is not something you need to justify receiving. It is something you allow by standing fully in the reality that you already deserve. When you live from that truth, you stop chasing and start attracting. You stop shrinking and start expanding. You stop waiting for permission and start stepping into the life you've always wanted, not because you finally earned it, but because you finally remembered it was yours all along. And in that remembering, you make space for abundance to flow in naturally, without force, without guilt, and without hesitation. Before abundance fully arrives in the physical sense, it first begins as a subtle shift within you. The world around you might still look the same. Your daily routines may still carry traces of the old struggles. And yet something deep inside feels different. It is as if the weight you've been carrying is slowly becoming lighter, even though you haven't yet put it down. This is how the transition from survival to abundance begins. Not with a sudden transformation that everyone can see, but with quiet signs that only you can feel at first. These inner signals are the early indicators that the change you've been waiting for is already underway. You may notice it in the way your thoughts are starting to shift. In survival mode, the mind is often consumed with fear, with what-if scenarios, with the constant calculation of how to avoid loss. But when abundance begins to approach, those thoughts gradually lose their grip. You find yourself imagining new possibilities instead of obsessing over worst-case outcomes. You start asking, what if things work out? Instead of what if everything goes wrong? This change in inner dialogue is one of the clearest signs that the tide is turning in your favor. It means your mind is beginning to align with the reality you're moving toward, even before it has shown up around you. Your emotional state begins to reflect this shift as well. You may have been used to feeling heavy, anxious, or constantly on guard. But now, moments of peace are appearing in between the worry. You might catch yourself smiling for no reason, feeling a sense of hope that can't be explained by your current circumstances. These moments are not random. They are evidence that your inner world is making space for abundance. Before your outer life can change, your inner life must believe it's possible. End of chapter 28. There will also be subtle changes in the choices you make. In survival mode, decisions are usually driven by immediate needs and the desire to avoid risk. But as abundance approaches, you begin to take actions that are more about growth than protection. You might invest time into learning something new, take a chance on an opportunity that once felt too uncertain, or simply allow yourself to rest without guilt. These small shifts in behavior show that you are no longer operating from pure scarcity. You are preparing for expansion. Even if you can't see the full picture yet, your actions are already aligning with it. Sometimes the first signs of abundance come in the form of people entering your life. Someone might offer you advice, resources, or encouragement at just the right moment. You may cross paths with someone who sees your potential and opens a door you didn't even know existed. These encounters may feel like coincidences, but they are part of the alignment that happens when you're moving into a new season. The right people, opportunities, and resources begin to find their way to you, not because you are forcing them to appear, but because you have started to resonate with the energy of abundance. Another sign is that you begin to feel less attached to the things you used to cling to for security. In survival mode, you often hold on tightly to whatever you have because it feels like letting go would leave you vulnerable. But as abundance draws near, you naturally start to release what no longer serves you. You may let go of relationships that drain you, habits that keep you stagnant, or fears that no longer feel as powerful as they once did. This release is a sign that you are making space for something better. It may feel uncomfortable at first, but it is a necessary part of the shift. Abundance also begins to show itself in the way you handle challenges. Struggles may still come, but you respond to them differently. Instead of spiraling into panic, you imagine for a moment that time is not a straight line, but a spiral. Looping, circling, unfolding in perfect harmony with your choices, your thoughts, and your surrender. Imagine that what you once saw as distant, impossible, even laughable, in the stillness of your most private pain, is not ahead of you, but waiting. Patiently, silently, as if the very moment you wept and begged, the cosmos replied, "It is done." Not in the language of the world, but in the secret pulse of the unseen, where time dances to a different rhythm, and faith becomes the currency of creation. You see, we live under the illusion that reality must be earned with toil and sweat, as if life was some cruel game where you are constantly behind. But what if the reality is much simpler and much more profound? What if the future you once cried out for isn't somewhere down a winding road, but right here, clothed in the form of a choice you keep avoiding, a step you refuse to take, A fear you dress up as logic and call it waiting for the right time. What if the future is not late, it's just standing still, waiting for you to move? We are taught to chase things, to run after the ideal life as if it's sprinting away from us. But have you ever wondered what happens when you stop running? When you pause, breathe, and simply ask, what if I'm not waiting for the future? What if the future is waiting for me? There's a kind of magic in stillness, not the stillness of doing nothing, but the stillness of alignment, a readiness that rises when your soul finally stops resisting what it already knows. And you begged for that breakthrough, when you whispered your prayers through clenched teeth and trembling hands, something heard you, and it began organizing circumstances, people, even your obstacles, into a divine choreography. The problem is the rhythm of your prayer and the rhythm of your fear began to clash. So life waited. It paused. It did not say no. It said, come into agreement. Not just in words, but in action, in movement, in courage. The world will never look like it's ready for your dream. That's the trap. The dream never appears in a perfectly paved moment. It always shows up disguised, as risk, as uncertainty, as a whisper that no one else can hear. And yet something deep within you recognizes it. That's why it stirs your gut, even when your mind shouts, be reasonable. That's why it keeps reappearing in your thoughts, tugging at your spirit when you're trying to settle for less. It doesn't care how many times you've failed or how long you've waited. It only asks, will you take the step? And this is where the great cosmic joke reveals itself. Because while you were asking for signs, the path was unfolding beneath your feet. While you were waiting for permission, life was offering opportunities hidden in discomfort, masked as decisions you feared to make. The gate was never locked, the door never truly closed. You were simply waiting for certainty. In a universe that only rewards trust, you don't need to see the whole staircase, just the first step. Because that step, however small, however shaky, is the spark. The instant you move, the future begins to move too. Not because you chased it down, but because you aligned with the reality that was always meant for you. The reality you once begged God for when you were broken, desperate, and doubting if you'd ever feel whole again. That future heard you. It remembered you. It has not forgotten. So the question is not whether the future is coming, it's whether you will meet it, whether you will match the energy of your own desire, whether you will live like your prayer has already been answered. Because in a way, it has. The universe is not withholding. It is waiting. Just one step. That's all it asks. One brave, irrational, holy step toward the unknown that already knows your name. There is something profoundly misunderstood about the nature of prayer. Most believe that to pray is to wait, as if the act itself is a question mark tossed into the heavens, hoping for some distant response. But prayer, true prayer, is not a request to an absent power. It is a recognition, a deep, intimate alignment with the truth that what you ask for already exists, not in some abstract, inaccessible future, but in the eternal now. When you begged God for that life, that healing, that shift, you were not introducing something new to existence. You were awakening to what had already been promised to you long before your first breath. And the moment you felt the need to cry out, that was not weakness. That was remembrance. Your soul remembered the path it came to walk. And in that moment of desperation, The voice within you reconnected to the timeline you thought had disappeared. It is an illusion to think that God responds slowly. The spiritual realm does not operate on delay. Delay exists in perception, not in reality. When a child asks for food, the loving parent does not begin to love in that moment. They've always loved. The food is already in the house. So too is it with God. The moment you begged, cried, or silently pleaded for a better future, something shifted. Not because God suddenly noticed you, but because your spirit finally surrendered enough to allow what was always available. And yet, in the illusion of time, we trick ourselves into thinking nothing happened. We say, God didn't answer, or it's taking too long. But what if the truth is this? The answer came instantly, and now it waits for you. So many live life backwards. They think change happens when they see evidence. When the bank account shifts, when the person returns, when the body heals. But that is not how it works. First, there is a cry. Then there is an echo in the spiritual realm that says yes. Then comes the unfolding. A divine orchestration of circumstances, detours, losses, and blessings in this great cosmic tapestry. It is not about whether you're being heard. It's about whether you're willing to walk toward what's been prepared. God did not forget your plea. It is we who forget to walk as though we've already been answered. If you knew your future had been secured the moment you asked, how would you behave today? Would you still doubt, hesitate, shrink? Or would you rise, take the step, and live as though the miracle is already unfolding beneath your feet? This is not just philosophy, it is spiritual law. The divine hears differently than we do. It responds to the vibration of belief, not the volume of desperation. And so when your heart was broken and you fell to your knees, something beyond your understanding began shifting realities, opening doors in realms you cannot see, aligning people you haven't met yet, and clearing paths through chaos, all in response to your heart's cry. But here is where many falter, because the answer rarely looks like the expectation. We pray for strength, and we are given trials. We pray for love, and we are asked to let go of what's killing us. We ask for purpose, and are thrown into silence, confusion, and loneliness. Not as punishment, but as preparation. And so, because it doesn't look like a gift, we reject the very thing that was sent to become the answer. That's the cruel joke our mind plays. We say we've been ignored when in fact we've just misunderstood the wrapping of the miracle. What you must come to understand is that God is not like man. He does not toy with your heart. He does not delay as a game. If it hasn't arrived yet, it's not because he's cruel. It's because there is something in you still growing to receive it. That prayer you whispered with cracked lips and tear-stained cheeks wasn't lost in the dark. It landed exactly where it needed to. It was heard in full. The only gap is your readiness. And sometimes readiness doesn't mean strength. There is something divine about those who trust their unseen future. They don't need proof. They carry a knowing that cannot be taken away. You've already lived long enough in the valley of waiting. But perhaps it was never waiting at all. Perhaps it was ripening. Perhaps God answered long ago, but the conditions around you were still catching up to your request. The future is not only coming, it has already been given a name. It has already been instructed where to meet you. And it's not far. It's one step beyond fear, one movement past hesitation, that life you dreamed of, the joy, the peace, the home, the calling, it heard you, and it began its journey the moment you cried out. Not as a maybe, as a certainty. And what makes this so beautiful is that you were never asking for something new. You were remembering something your soul always knew. That's why it hurts so deeply to be without it. That's why the desire didn't go away even when you tried to forget, because it's not a fantasy, it's a signal, a divine echo reverberating through your being, telling you, keep going, it's real, it's yours, it's waiting. You're not delusional for dreaming big, you're just finally aligned with what was written for you long ago. And if you dare to trust that your prayer was heard not as a question but as an agreement, then you will walk with a new kind of power. Not the power of force, but the power of surrender. The knowing that all things are already done, and the only thing left is the step. We spend so much of our lives chasing dreams, chasing approval, chasing the idea of a life that finally matches what we once imagined when we were younger and untouched by disappointment. But in all that chasing, we never stop to ask, what if the very thing we are pursuing isn't moving at all? What if it's standing completely still, watching us frantically loop through doubts and delays, just waiting for us to take the step inward rather than out? What if the future is not some wild thing to be hunted down, but a quiet presence waiting to be received? You see, the energy of chasing is rooted in the belief that something is running away from you, that you must hurry, hustle, prove yourself worthy, and eventually collapse at the feet of some victory that finally allows you to rest. But life doesn't reward force. It responds to alignment. To move toward what you desire isn't about speed. It's about tuning yourself to the frequency of what you've asked for. And alignment does not come from striving, it comes from becoming. It's not about doing more, it's about becoming more of who you were before the world taught you to doubt. So when you begged for that life, for that change, for that breakthrough, something in the fabric of the unseen responded immediately, not with a sprint, not with noise, but with a stillness, a holding pattern, a quiet promise that says it's here when you're ready to meet it. And readiness, contrary to what we've been told, is not about being perfect. It's about being in agreement with the life you say you want. So many claim to want transformation, but they still argue for their limitations. They speak the language of faith, but walk with a posture of fear. They say they believe, but live as if nothing is coming. And so the future remains still, not out of cruelty, but because it cannot violate your own resistance. Life is far more intelligent than we give it credit for. It listens to your inner frequency more than your outer speech. It watches how you walk, not just what you say. If you speak of blessings but sabotage every open door, the universe doesn't punish you. It pauses. If you dream of freedom but stay bound to what's comfortable and familiar, life doesn't slam the door. It waits. And that's the mystery. The pause is not denial. It's a mirror. It reflects the space between what you want and who you are currently being. And until those two align, the future remains unmoved. You are not meant to chase your destiny. You are meant to become the kind of person that destiny recognizes. And the moment your internal state matches the vibration of what you once cried for, it will no longer feel like a pursuit. It will feel like a reunion, like something you've always known but had forgotten. There is a strange comfort in that realization, because it means the future isn't ahead of you, dangling just out of reach. It's here, in this breath, in this choice, in this exact moment. And all it requires is agreement. What does agreement look like? It looks like walking even when the path is unclear. It looks like speaking from a place of certainty even when evidence says otherwise. It looks like acting as though what you prayed for has already arrived, because on a spiritual level, it has. When you enter that state of alignment, life no longer feels like an endless waiting room. It becomes a living, breathing co-creation between you and something higher, something that doesn't need to be convinced. It only needs to be invited. And perhaps the greatest misunderstanding is thinking that alignment is some complex, mystical achievement, but it's not. It's the most natural state you were ever meant to embody. It is returning to the version of yourself that trusts deeply, acts boldly, and moves forward, not because the road is guaranteed to be smooth, but because you know who walks beside you. The hesitation you feel isn't from the universe. It's from the battle between your calling and your conditioning. Your calling says go, your conditioning says wait. Your calling says you're worthy, your conditioning says prove it. And in that inner war, alignment is the choice to trust the calling even when nothing makes sense. That future you cried out for doesn't need you to be fearless. It needs you to be honest, to admit where you've been hiding, to acknowledge the dreams you buried beneath disappointment, to take the small, trembling step that says, I choose to believe again. And in that step you do something extraordinary. You stop chasing, you stop begging, you start becoming. And the moment you do, the atmosphere around you shifts, the silence begins to echo with possibility. The delays begin to dissolve. Not because the world suddenly changed, but because you did. There is something holy about moving without proof, about walking forward when your past is still screaming your failures in your ear. Because that kind of movement says to life, I am no longer aligned with fear. I am aligned with what I asked for. And when that alignment takes hold, things begin to happen without explanation. Not by force, not by manipulation, but by divine orchestration. People show up, opportunities unfold, inner peace becomes the loudest voice, and you begin to realize it was never about chasing. You can't become as it is. You can't outsmart nature. You can't exercise your way out of it. It's all about inner Indu. You were never meant to run after your future like a beggar seeking crumbs. You were meant to walk toward it like a child returning home. And every time you choose trust over fear, you are taking another step closer, not because the future moved, but because you finally did. Because you stopped playing small, because you dared to believe the whisper that said, it's yours. because you stopped waiting for life to drag you and decided to stand in agreement with what's already waiting. You don't need to earn it. You only need to receive it. And that receiving begins the moment you realize you were never behind, you were just out of alignment. And the second you return to that frequency, the future stops waiting and starts unfolding. Not because it changed its mind, but because you finally changed your direction. There's a peculiar kind of pain in believing that the life you dream of is locked away, hidden behind doors you'll never have the key to. Many people live this way, thinking that joy, peace, freedom, and purpose belong to someone else, someone more capable, more connected, more deserving. But what if I told you the door was never locked? What if all this time the thing you thought was inaccessible was only waiting for your hand to reach for it? The tragedy is not in the doors being closed. The tragedy is in never trying the handle. The mind is powerful. It can create entire prisons out of fear and self-doubt, walls out of insecurity, ceilings out of old voices that told you you were not enough. And so even when opportunity stands before you, disguised as discomfort or the unknown, you don't walk through. You assume rejection before you even ask. You imagine failure before you even begin. But life was never the one holding you back. It's the voice inside that convinced you the room was too bright for you to enter, that joy was too extravagant, that love was too pure for someone like you. These lies fester quietly until one day you stop even approaching doors. For the truth is, the doors have always been open. There is a difference between locked and untried. You may not see it until you take the risk. Until you decide that the pain of staying stuck is greater than the fear of trying again. God does not tease. He does not dangle hope like bait. If he placed the desire in your spirit, he also made a way. But the way will often defy your expectations. The path is rarely paved with clarity. It's rough, jagged, and quiet. It will not shout your name. It will not announce its presence with flashing lights. It whispers. It humbles. It invites. What you need to understand is that your breakthrough doesn't come with a grand unveiling. It comes when you begin to challenge the illusion that you are locked out. Most of what people call closed doors are really just unopened ones. They never turned the knob because they were waiting for a sign, for a moment where everything felt perfectly safe. But spiritual doors do not open to comfort. They open to faith. You will not feel ready. You will not feel certain, and that's how you know it's real. Because growth never comes dressed in reassurance. It comes dressed in silence. It comes wrapped in risk, and so you keep waiting. You tell yourself the timing isn't right, that maybe next month or next year you'll try. But the longer you delay, the more you convince yourself that the delay is coming from outside, that maybe life is against you, that maybe the dream was too big. But delay does not always come from life. Delay often comes from hesitation. The door waits. Your hand doesn't move. The possibility stands still. You pray, you plead, you cry. You pray, you plead, you cry. But the door doesn't respond to desperation. It responds to motion. You pray, you plead, you cry. The door doesn't respond to desperation. You pray, you plead, you cry, you desperately, you plead, you plead, The strange irony is that most people spend their entire lives asking for what is already in front of them. They ask God for clarity, but resist the very opportunity that makes them uncomfortable. They ask for peace, but refuse to leave the chaos that they've become used to. They ask for a new season, but grip the old one with clenched fists. And in that conflict, they become blind to what is available. The door becomes invisible, not because it disappeared, but because their focus is still on what they fear will go wrong. This is why faith is not about waiting for the stars to align. Faith is about stepping into the unknown with trembling legs and a trusting heart. It is not confidence in the outcome, it's confidence in the one who called you forward. It is walking toward the closed door, not knowing if it will open, but knowing that if it doesn't, another will. And if it does, it will have only opened because you moved. Some people think they're being denied, when in reality they're just being invited to trust. God doesn't deny what he promised, but he will wait for you to grow into the kind of person who no longer needs the illusion of control. He'll wait until you're done pretending to be unworthy, until you've had enough of your own excuses, until you realize that there is no perfect time, only a brave step. And the step is the key. You may be staring at something right now that feels unreachable, a life that feels too far, a dream that feels too good, and yet something within you keeps drawing you back to it. That is not coincidence. That is confirmation. That is the whisper saying, this is yours. Not when you're better, not when you're richer, not when you're less broken, but now. The door doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for belief. And belief isn't loud. It's not theatrical. Sometimes it's as quiet as getting out of bed one more day. Sometimes it's applying for the job you feel underqualified for. Sometimes it's forgiving someone who never apologized. Or leaving a room that no longer honors you. These are the small moments where you reach for the handle, where you test the lies you've lived under, where you realize that maybe, just maybe, you're not as trapped as you thought. And if you dare to move, to try, to walk toward what calls your spirit, even with your heart pounding and your mind screaming, you'll discover something profound. You'll discover that the door opens for the one who approaches it with faith, not because life favors the brave, but because life responds to the brave. What we say aligns to the choice. This is not about forcing anything open. It's about finally recognizing that it was never locked, that you've been standing at the edge of a breakthrough disguised as a choice you keep avoiding, that the dream is not in the distance, it's just on the other side of your decision. Not the decision to control or perfect or figure everything out, just the decision to try, to move, to trust that the unseen has been waiting for you to stop waiting. And in that motion, something divine begins to unfold. The energy shifts, the room changes, the atmosphere becomes pregnant with possibility. Not because you changed the world, but because you finally changed your posture. You stood up. You reached out. You believed that maybe, just maybe, what you were seeking had already been made ready. and all it ever needed was you. Desire is a mysterious thing. It doesn't come from logic. It doesn't rise out of calculation or social conditioning. True desire, the kind that lingers through disappointment and reappears in the stillness of your soul, comes from something deeper. It is a whisper from your future, echoing backward into your present. It calls not to your ego, but to your essence. And for many, that whisper becomes unbearable, not because it's too loud, but because it refuses to go away. You've tried to silence it with rational thinking. You've tried to drown it in compromise. You've tried to smother it with the expectations of others. But it's still there, isn't it? That longing, that ache, that vision of what could be. It would be easier if it weren't so persistent, if it would just vanish and leave you in peace. But it doesn't. Because it isn't a fantasy. It isn't a childish hope. It's a signal, a divine reminder of what your life is capable of becoming if only you stop settling for what's convenient. You weren't given that dream to torment you. You were given that dream to guide you, to show you the direction of your becoming. But what happens when you ignore it long enough? When you bury it under layers of fear, busyness, practicality, it doesn't disappear, it haunts. It becomes the silent discontent that follows you through even your happiest moments, reminding you that something essential is missing. You may try to convince yourself that you've outgrown the dream, that maybe it was just immaturity, that maybe you were aiming too high. But no matter how hard you try, the truth remains. You can't unknow what you felt. You can't unsee the life your spirit glimpsed in prayer, in imagination, in those quiet moments when you let yourself be honest. And that's the point. Desire is not random. It's sacred. It's proof that something already exists in another layer of reality, and it's waiting for you to rise and meet it. You don't desire it because you're greedy or delusional. You desire it because it belongs to you, because it's been calling your name since before you knew how to answer. That calling isn't meant to flatter your ego. It's meant to transform you. It demands that you evolve, that you confront the parts of yourself that would rather stay small, that you trade familiarity for fulfillment. And that's where most people stop, not because the desire is wrong, but because the path to it looks nothing like what they expected. The road to becoming is littered with obstacles, not because life is cruel, but because everything you've asked for requires a version of you that can handle it. You don't just stumble into alignment. You grow into it. You bleed for it. You wrestle with your shadows until you realize they're not there to destroy you. They're there to refine you. And yet, even in the pain, the longing stays. You carry it like a candle in a dark room. Some days it flickers. Some days it nearly dies. But somehow it keeps burning. That's not coincidence. That's confirmation. It's how you know it's not just a passing emotion. It's a blueprint, a map written into your spirit. And every time you take a step toward it, even if that step feels insignificant, the flame grows. The path becomes clearer, not because the world is changing, but because you are. We're taught to question our desires, to doubt anything that feels too good or too big. We're told to be realistic, to be grateful for what we have. And yes, gratitude is sacred. But so is hunger. the hunger for a life that reflects the truth of who you are, the hunger for more than survival, for beauty, for meaning, for connection, for contribution. That hunger isn't your enemy, it's your compass. And when you ignore it, you don't become wiser, you become numb. The world doesn't need more people who have mastered safety. It needs people who have surrendered to their calling. People who understand that desire is not indulgence, it's instruction. And the deeper the desire, the greater the responsibility, because with desire comes the invitation to rise, to become the kind of person who doesn't just crave the life they imagine, but embodies it. And this is not about external achievement. It's about inner alignment, about learning how to walk in truth even when it costs you comfort, about building a life that doesn't just look good from the outside, but feels sacred on the inside. So if the desire hasn't left you, don't ignore it. Don't call it silly. Don't wait for others to understand it. It wasn't given to them, it was given to you. And the longer you wait for someone else to validate it, the longer you delay the life that's waiting on the other side of your belief. You don't need approval, you need obedience. Not to society, not to tradition, but to that inner voice that keeps calling you forward. And yes, there will be fear, there will be failure, there will be days when you wonder if you've made a mistake. But what's the alternative? A life of quiet regret? Of wondering what could have happened if you had just tried? You were not born to carry unfulfilled visions to your grave. You were born to bring heaven to earth through the vessel of your own transformation. That's why it hurts so much to ignore your desire, because something in you knows this isn't about selfishness. This is about stewardship, about honoring the gift you've been given by becoming the person who can carry it. And here's the most beautiful truth of all. You're not starting from nothing. You're starting from longing. And longing is powerful. Longing is proof that the dream is alive, that it hasn't given up on you. Even if you've given up on it, so what if today was the day you stopped treating your desire like a burden and started treating it like a beacon? What if you let it lead you, not with force, but with faith? What if you finally believed that the dream you've been holding wasn't just possible, but inevitable the moment you said yes? The future you begged for began forming the moment you cried out. And that desire that refuses to leave you alone is not a curse. It's your calling. It is not there to torment you. It is there to awaken you, to remind you that life is not something to survive, it's something to create. And every time you say yes to your desire, every time you walk toward it instead of running from it, you bring yourself closer to the life that's already been waiting for you. There is a sacred moment between longing and manifestation. A moment when nothing around you has changed, yet everything inside of you begins to shift. It's the moment when you take a single step, not a grand leap, not a spectacular breakthrough, just a quiet, deliberate movement toward the life you believe in. And in that step, something powerful happens. You activate what was waiting. You stir what was still. You awaken the invisible forces that have been holding your future like a breath held in anticipation. The irony of transformation is that it often begins with the most ordinary action. A phone call made, a sentence spoken, a risk taken, a door walked through. And yet those simple acts become sacred because they signal something much greater. the collapse of fear and the rise of faith. Many wait for signs before they move. They wait for certainty, for approval, for the timing to look just right. But the universe doesn't respond to hesitation. It responds to motion. That motion is what faith looks like in action. Not the absence of fear, but the decision to no longer be ruled by it. When you take the step, you declare that you trust in something higher than logic. You tell the unseen, I'm ready to meet what I once only imagined. And it is in that readiness that life begins to respond. We often think the breakthrough lies on the other side of 1,000 perfect decisions. But what if it only ever required one imperfect but honest step? One movement toward your calling, no matter how unqualified you feel. One step toward healing, even if your heart still aches. One act of courage, even if your knees are shaking. The step is not about your strength. It's about your surrender. It's about saying, I don't know what's ahead, but I know I can't stay here. The future doesn't come crashing into your life with blinding lights and dramatic scenes. It unfolds quietly, like a sunrise. Each ray of light arrives the moment you decide you're ready to open the curtain. The moment you stop asking for a guarantee and start acting like your prayer has already been answered. There is power in pretending nothing bothers you, but greater power in pretending nothing bothers you, but greater power in choosing to believe something better awaits, even when everything around you contradicts it. That's what the step is. A holy contradiction. A refusal to accept current circumstances as the final verdict. People often imagine they need to be completely healed, fully prepared, emotionally stable and spiritually mature before they move forward. But what if the step is what initiates the healing? What if moving is what grows your strength? What if walking is what clarifies your purpose? You don't get the vision and then move. You move and the vision becomes clearer. You don't wait for peace to begin. You begin and peace follows. The future doesn't require your perfection. It only needs your permission. Somewhere along the way, we started believing that change must be dramatic in order to be real. But the most life-altering changes happen in the smallest decisions. Saying no when you used to say yes. Choosing silence when you used to scream. Leaving when you used to stay. Trying one more time when you've already failed 100 times before. These are the kinds of steps that shift timelines, that realign your energy, that open the gates to the version of you you've been praying to become. And it doesn't matter how long you've waited. It doesn't matter how many wrong turns you've taken. The beautiful truth is this. The moment you take the step, time begins to redeem itself. All the years of confusion, delay, heartbreak, they begin to bend in your favor, because grace does not keep score. It responds to faith. It doesn't ask where you've been. It only asks, are you ready now? And when you say yes, even with trembling hands, you don't need to map out the entire journey. The future you cried out for does not demand your control. It invites your trust. The first step isn't about fixing your whole life. It's about shifting your direction.